So, what'll it be then?
There should be a third shoe. Hey guys, in today's video I'm turning the perverted Margot Robbie food scene from the Barbie movie into a custom shoe design. Then I'm 3D printing the shoe and trying it out. I have to start by admitting that I haven't actually seen the film, but I've watched some trailers and clips and I figured that should be enough for a thoughtful video. Now, a lot of my friends who'd seen the film dismiss it as just the next woke, feminist, popcorn movie, but precisely because I haven't seen it yet, I have a somewhat different take. So let's start with the most interesting part of the trailer, and probably the whole film.
I thought I might stay over tonight.
To do what?
I'm actually not sure.
The scene obviously implies that dolls have no genitals, but what does this actually mean? So Barbie World is practically heaven with a feminist spin. It's always spring, there's always food, every Barbie is so pretty and so happy, everything's perfect. But in fact it's so perfect that every day is perfectly the same. You cannot even age there. So basically this Barbie World heaven is the most boring place imaginable. Yeah, it's perfect, but it's sterile. That's the point of the scene. Barbie and Ken are the dream boyfriend-girlfriend, but they can't consume or even experience their relationship, they're sterile. Then Barbie starts thinking, you know, maybe heaven is not really that good.
Do you guys ever think about dying?
At this point, heaven has nothing else to offer, so naturally Barbie starts having some problems such as cellulite and flat feet. This one's for the perverts. But those so-called problems are what actually makes life interesting. And to fix her flat feet problem, Margo Robbie is confronted with a Matrix-like choice. She's forced to pick between the classic Barbie shoe on the one hand and the Birkenstock on the other.
You can go back to your regular life, or you can know the truth about the universe.
Now the Barbie shoe is easy to read because it represents the sterile feminist heaven. So you'd expect the Birkenstock to be the opposite, right? Float, worn in, real. But no. Today Birkenstock is just branded reality. It's the symbol of the hipster heaven. When you buy Birkenstock, you're signaling I'm so real with my $150 slippers and $30 crew socks. But not really. Nothing screams I'm not real as buying the most mass-produced symbol of realness. The problem with this choice thing is that it's not really a choice. Margot Robbie could choose either shoe and it would be like choosing between two versions of the same sterile heaven. So I decided to produce an authentic Barbie shoe. But what does the shoe look like? Now in my mind, an authentic shoe for Barbie, one with real identity, would reflect her newly acquired defects like the flat feet and the real physicality of her environment. To make the shoe, I got myself a Barbie doll and flattened its feet with a lighter. While the Barbie's feet are still soft and sticky, she's faced with this path made of sprinkles. And of course she starts walking through these sprinkles, which stick to her feet and form her new shoe, so to speak. And here's the result of the experiment. So to turn this concept into an actual shoe, first I need a 3D model of my foot. Here I'm taking a bunch of photos of my foot from different angles, which I then feed into an app that creates a 3D model based on those images. Next I'm 3D printing the model to test the fit. And it's not at all perfect. But instead of tweaking the 3D model, I thought, what if I used Margot Robbie's foot instead of mine? So I can walk in Barbie's feet, so to speak. So I did some rough outlines of her foot and built a 3D model based on that. Then I scaled it to match my size and I 3D printed it. Trying it on feels a bit like a Cinderella moment. Or a Barbarella moment. Either way, I'm a little concerned about what it means if it fits. Yeah, I think it does. A bit too well even. I'll let you figure out the symbolism in the comments, and if that sounds like your kind of a bedtime story, maybe subscribe. You'll probably regret it, but in the end so did Cinderella. Now I got some corn sticks from the supermarket to create a more structured model of the shoe. I'm using the Margot Robbie foot model and gluing the corn sticks around it to basically enlarge the original sprinkles design. At this point I honestly don't know what the final shape's gonna be, but the idea is to explore. By bulking the model up with the corn sticks, I'm toying with the idea of sticking as a design concept. It's not about making a wearable shoe yet. What's interesting is that Barbies, now flat feet, have joints. They can move. So when I put on the model and start moving my foot, the corn sticks around the joints just fall off. And that's kind of the key I was looking for with this model. Wherever the foot moves, the form cannot hold. So based on that concept, I 3D printed a bunch of small models to test things out. And now I'm finally starting the print of the actual shoe prototype. The shoe will be printed in 2 parts and it will take about 10 days of printing. I'm using flexible TPU filament for this, so fingers crossed, it will actually be wearable. But here's the catch, I'm printing it on a Bowden printer, which is arguably the worst type of printer you could use for flexible filament, and here's why. In Bowden setups, the filament is pushed through this Bowden tube by this motor that's mounted away from the hot end. This is the hot end. And with flexible filament, that's a recipe for disaster because the filament wiggles inside the tube, leading to jams or inconsistent printing. Anyway, I'm using this inferior printer on purpose because I think obviously everybody has the right to a Barbie shoe. But 23 hours into the print this happened. Part of the shoe bent and detached from the print bed. So here's what I'm doing now. I'm pausing the print and I'm gluing the shoe back to the bed using a hot glue gun. Now I could get away with that because I had put painter's tape on the bed beforehand, and if you apply hot glue directly onto the build plate, you'll probably damage it. Ironically though, the tape was probably the reason the print detached in the first place. Fast forward another 24 hours, and now the tape itself started peeling off the bed. So I paused the print again, and this time I'm using bulldog clips to hold the tape in place and stop it from peeling any further. I'm resuming the print, and luckily after 3 more days the first part of the shoe is printed. For the second part of the shoe, I'm not using any tape. Now back to the Bowden setup explanation. So how did I manage to get around the usual TPU printing problems? After some testing, I found that Bowden printers can actually handle flexible filament okay, as long as the shapes being printed are mostly extruded, meaning they have vertical walls. That's actually part of the reason behind the shoe design, except my love for sparkles. Everything went quite well with the staples print, except removing the print from the print bed. That part is a struggle. Which is followed by an even bigger struggle to remove the supports inside the print where the foot is gonna be. I somehow managed with the first part, but the second part is giving me a really hard time. That is until I realized that twisting the supports with a pair of pliers actually makes them break off pretty easily. You can spot all the tiny imperfections left behind by the support structures, and those imperfections are fine on the inside of the shoe, where no one's going to see them, but the outside is different. That's why these outside supports are not auto-generated, instead I custom modeled them in 3D with the idea to cut them off by hand after printing. This way the outer surface stays sharp and clean as long as the person doing the cutting has surgical precision, which I definitely don't. And the other downside is that it took me an entire day of just cutting off supports. Before I move on, I have to quickly sneak my foot into the shoe parts just to see if they fit. No major red flags so far, so it's time to connect the 2 pieces. I'm using a glue that contains a chemical called tetrahydrofurane, I think is the name, or just THF. This THF chemical solvent welds TPU parts together. It means it's not a regular adhesive, it doesn't just stick to the surface, it actually softens the plastic parts slightly and fuses them together, kind of like welding. The parts are then connected using a joint where one piece penetrates the other, unlike Barbie and Ken. And to ensure that the male part doesn't just exit the female part while the solvent is drying, the pieces are held together using these wooden dowels. The dowels themselves penetrate both pieces, so every hole that the 2 parts share is filled with these dowels now. And sometimes you gotta use force. I was planning for the dowels to be temporary, but I like how they ensure that the 2 pieces of the shoe won't come apart, so I decided to stick with this dowel idea. I print some new dowels out of TPU, cut off the seams of the prints, cut them to size, and glue them in place. Here you can see how the shoe looks with the dowels. For the sole, I'm using extra thick dowels. And this is the finished shoe. Here I'm taking some pictures just in case it falls apart when I try it on. So far so good. I think it looks promising, so I guess it's time to throw on the shoe. Surprisingly, it actually feels pretty comfortable. The sole is nice and squishy, the upper part is flexible, all in all very wearable. And this is the best part. My foot is not exactly the same as Margo Robbie's. You see how my heel kind of slips out the back? It means it's not a perfect fit. Now let's test this thing in the real world. After walking for about an hour, I start to feel some discomfort around the heel area, where the model didn't fit well, but aside from that, it honestly feels just as good as a real shoe. Before I wrap the video, I want to show you how the inside of the shoe works, so I'm cutting the shoe in half like the rose anvil guy. No, just kidding, this thing took way too long to make, but I did print a cross section of the shoe to show you what's going on inside. The upper part of the shoe is made from a series of hollowed out cylinders. These hollow sections allow the cylinder walls to flex, making the shoe more comfortable when you walk. They also allow for the breathability of the shoe, which is super important because 3D printing materials aren't exactly known for letting your feet breathe. And if the shoe was enclosed, it would be like having a plastic sock on your foot. The cylinders in the sole area are a bit more rigid. The bottom row acts as an outsole, and it's printed with 20% infill to give it extra durability and structure. And the rest of the sole above that is printed with just 5% infill to allow for more cushioning and squish when you walk. If you made it this far, congratulations! You now know more about Barbie shoes than most people ever will. Let me know what you think. Would you wear the shoe, or is it just too ugly? Cause honestly, I don't think I'd wear it if I hadn't made it myself. But hey, I wouldn't wear the original Barbie shoe too. And I don't really have Birkenstocks, I just have the box. And I also wouldn't subscribe to this channel, but you should consider it. Anyways, thanks for watching. Maybe see you in the next video.